I have a question. What's the difference between the U.S. debt and the debt that African nations own? Because the U.S. debt doesn't keep the U.S. from being one of the leading powers of the world, but then African nations can't make it because of that debt that is strangling them.
Should I talk? Okay. The first question is a very important question. What makes African and third world debt different from the American debt? Number one, America is never going to pay its debts. It doesn't have to. Its debts are in its own currency. We can simply print it. The African debt is not in its currency. The African debt is in U.S. dollars. Africa has to earn the U.S. dollars, and the only way it can earn the U.S. dollars is not to be assassinated for growing its own food and becoming independent and doing something that the United States does not like.
So, Michael, let's talk numbers. The United States government borrows $2.6 million every single minute. Congress has raised the federal debt ceiling 6 times in the past 3 years. But some people are saying that this time, with the number of Tea Party candidates that just got elected, things might be different. What's your take? Do you think Congress will vote to raise the debt ceiling yet again?
The important thing to realize is that the government doesn't really borrow, it creates money. The role of a central bank is to finance the government deficit by printing money. So the whole issue about whether the United States has a debt problem is largely fictitious. The problem the United States has is the foreign debt problem, and that's not even being discussed.
Michael, recently the chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, Austin Goolsbee, said this about the debt limit. Take a listen.
If we hit the debt ceiling, that's essentially defaulting on our obligations, which is totally unprecedented in American history. The impact on the economy would be catastrophic.
How catastrophic would it be, in your opinion?
It would be like stepping on a piece of gum and having to get it off your shoe. Adam Smith said in The Wealth of Nations that no government has ever repaid its debt, and you can say that today. Nothing has changed. It would be a zero problem. People who talk like that are trying to frighten you, and when a politician tries to frighten you, you can think of, what is it that he wants me to do? How am I being manipulated? This is pure ignorance, and it's obvious that if Mr. Goolsbee knew anything about money and credit, he wouldn't have anything to do with the University of Chicago to begin with.
Sometimes I wonder what kind of people we are living with in this universe, in this earth. Some people, a group of people, call themselves the world police, or they call themselves the stewards of humanity. You cannot call yourself a steward of humanity when you yourself are very, very strategic in oppressing other countries. What am I saying? I'm speaking about the system that has been placed by the United States of America and those Western countries to continue oppressing us and to place us dependent on them. You see, when you are dependent on someone, they control how you do your things. They control how you eat, how you feed, how you reproduce, and how you even plant your crops and you grow your animals. You know, we've had things such as the debt trap policy. The debt trap policy is a strategic movement that is made by the Western powers. Some people claim that China is also doing the same, but in this case, we are going to use the United States of America and the Western countries. They bombard Africans with a lot of credits, with a lot of debts. And these debts, they use them to get what they want from the Africans. You get it?
There's no question that the United States is in major debt, but the latest numbers show that the national debt of this country has surpassed $14 trillion for the first time. From June of 2010 to the end of the year, the United States managed to rack up another $1 trillion to its debt. Even scarier, this country is coming extremely close to reaching its statutory ceiling of $14.3 trillion set by Congress last year. So what's going to happen next? And will Congress increase the ceiling even more? Can the United States find a way to stop borrowing? Joining me to help discuss this is professor and economist Michael Hudson from our New York studio.
A professor came forward and was explaining that the United States of America, when it borrows loan, and the African countries also borrow loan, they pay it differently. You've heard about the BRICS. The BRICS came and they tried to change the way trade is done. You know, normally if people want to trade internationally, they have to trade using the United States of America dollar. The United States of America plates itself as as if you want to trade, you have to use their money. You cannot trade using your money. If Kenya wants to trade with Uganda, they cannot trade using their own money. They trade using USD. You understand? When you borrow money using USD. So this one puts a lot of value on the US dollar. Now the BRICS came to break this norm because this norm was predatory and it was harming and hurting poor African countries and third world countries across the world. You see, when the United States of America borrows money, it's their own money they are borrowing, money printed in their own country with their name on it. So what can they do? They just go and print more papers and pay it with papers. But for African countries, we have to struggle through it. We have to make it hard for it's a lot of struggle. It's so much struggle. I want us to listen to the professor. I shall get back by the end of the video where we shall also have a deeper critical analysis. Let's dive in.
So we do have some time now for questions from the audience. I wonder if we should just take a few, and then we can respond to them all together. So, okay.
Thank you. I have a question. What's the difference between the U.S. debt and the debt that African nations own? Because the U.S. debt doesn't keep the U.S. from being one of the leading powers of the world, but then African nations can't make it because of that debt that is strangling them.
Shall I talk? Okay. The first question is a very important question. What makes African and third world debt different from the American debt? Number one, America is never going to pay its debts. It doesn't have to. Its debts are in its own currency. We can simply print it. The African debt is not in its currency. The African debt is in US dollars. Africa has to earn the US dollars, and the only way it can earn the US dollars is not to be assassinated for growing its own food and becoming independent and doing something that the United States does not like. The principle underlying the foundation of the World Bank, the International Bank for IBRD, research, the World Bank, is that no country should grow its own food. Africa and the third world should only grow export crops. To export, in order to have an oversupply of cocoa and other tropical raw materials, to keep down the price, they must buy their grain from the United States or Europe, so that if they do something that we don't like, we can do what America tried to do to China in the 60s. We can sanction them. We can say, we're going to starve you. We're going to not export any grain to you. So owing their foreign debt in dollars means that they have to somehow sell something that the United States wants, not what they want. I think the most evil organizations in the world today are the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And my book, Super Imperialism, that I wrote in 1972, is all about that. The largest purchasers of the book were the Defense Department and the CIA. I was immediately, the organization I worked for was given a $75,000, $85,000 Defense Department contract for me to come to explain to them how American imperialism worked, and they used it as a how to do it book. They thought it was just spontaneous, and I had written the book thinking that socialists in third world countries would do something about it, and indeed it was translated into Spanish and other languages. But it was really the Defense Department that applied most of this, and I was amazed when I was invited to the White House to explain how imperialism worked. And my boss said, "We've run rings around the British imperialists. This is how to do it. You make them owe the debts in your currency, not their own. You control their central bank and make them financially dependent on you, and then you've got a stranglehold for them." So certainly the third world countries should cancel the debts under the odious debt principle. I haven't been able to convince any of them to do it because they said if we do that, the CIA will kill us. So how do you break that cycle? That's a problem I've not been able to solve.
The other thing, when you were responding to the first question, there's also something we're suffering from in Africa, the devaluation of currency as another way of...
Devaluation of?
The currency.
Oh, currency, yes.
As a way of keeping us dependent continuously.
That's a good point. When a country devalues a currency, what are they devaluing? Well, you know, there's a world price for grain, a world price for aluminum, a world price for raw materials. The only thing that they can really devalue is the price of their labor. So when Africa or Latin America or Greece is told to, or America is told to devalue the currency, what that means is pay labor less. You have to squeeze out more to pay the top of the economic pyramid, to suck it all up to the top 10% or 1% or 0.1%. So devaluation is basically an anti-labor policy to prevent a domestic market and prosperity from developing. That is why China and Russia are saying, we don't want to be part of the dollar area. We want our own currency, and we'll only borrow in our own debt. Last time I went to China, it was a little annoying because they insisted in paying me in yuan, which all these little red bills that you have to go to a bank to turn in, and yet they said, well, we're following your advice. What do you complain about? So what could I do? It's a good idea, but at least they don't want any part of American sanctions.
Uganda, what would you do to spur it to levels of growth and development that are
Number
desired?
one, I would make my own money, and I would not balance it, or I would not back it by the American dollar or any other currency. In fact,
Then it wouldn't be money.
What is money?
Weighed against what? Because money...
Well, American money is made against what?
Gold.
Which gold? My God, you said so you have internet. Check, they don't have any. It is just paper. It's made up by tanks and F-15 fighters. They have no gold. It is the Federal Reserve has no reserve and is not federal. It's a private institution. Hey, you disappoint me today.
No, you
Yes,
actually
you
disappoint me. I know.
The Federal Reserve.
This is where we differ as students of economics.
Oh, wait.
And I.
Okay, now let's talk
now,
economics.
The student of history and the student of economics will differ completely.
I am not only a student of economics, I am a teacher of economics. And I'm going to teach economics on your show. And I'm, I'm a teacher. I can't afford to be ridiculous. I am coming on your show to tell you that the Federal Reserve, first of all, is not federal. It's not a government agency. It is a private institution owned by 12 individuals. And it has no reserve. The dollar has no reserve. It is just paper with graphics on it. And how dare our country, backs its money
against the dollar,
against a piece of paper which somebody prints. When the Secretary to the Treasury in America wants money, wants to buy, for example, Uganda Airlines, let's assume, he is not going to say what. He orders the mint. He asks them, how long will it take you to print this? Yes, I know truth makes you laugh. Why do you think they're having trouble with Russia? because Russia is buying gold and it is moving away from the dollar. And China is the same. China is moving gold. Look at the countries that have now the largest collection of gold. You'll find Russia amongst them. Russia and China. They want a currency that is backed by gold. And Uganda has gold. What they would do is they would make our currency gold, which means 1 gram of 1 shilling, if it was gold, would be now equivalent to about 120 of today's money, Uganda shillings, which would be about $50. Our shilling would be about $50.
If it were gold.
If it were gold. And we have gold. So instead of letting this gold hemorrhage out of the country, we would get this money and turn it into gold.
The gold standard.
That's the gold standard. You've got it. Do you know how it started? People would come, they deposit gold here. Because gold is heavy, it's very heavy, you would give them a piece of paper. Now, when they get to Masaka, instead of coming back when they want to purchase something, they would pass the paper to someone else. That is why when you look at the pound, they say promise to...
What if I told you that the world's richest continent is also the most exploited continent in the world? Listen to this. 54 recognized countries in Africa. It produces 7 to 9% of the global oil production, about 80 to 90% of the world's platinum supply, about 80 to 90% of the world's cobalt supply. And Africa is also the world's largest regional gold producer, accounting for some 27% of gold production in the year 2022. It holds about 69% of the world's manganese supplies, 35% of the world's uranium, 60% of global diamond value, and over 874 million hectares of agricultural land, which is 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land. Africa's got a lot of natural gas, with about 10% of the global copper output coming from Africa. It holds over 75% of the world's phosphorate rock reserves, and Tanzania could hold up to 54 billion cubic feet of helium, still underdeveloped. Africa is geographically key, with major sea routes and strategic military interest for Europe, America, China, and Russia. Africa is the most resource-rich continent per capita in the world. Yet, Africa only produces 3% of the global GDP. 3%. So, without any doubt, Africa is the most attractive, mineral-rich continent in the world. Watch out, Africa. They're coming for you.
This was such a revealing and a compelling confession by the professor. And I'm thinking that the antidote to this problem is growing our own food. Because when we grow our own food, we depend on ourselves. Second thing is stop dependency. African countries should stop borrowing loans every now and then from these countries which has proven that they don't have our best interest at heart. We should go the Traore style. You know what I mean by Traore style. Now, we've seen that when we borrow money, we pay in their own currency, and they borrow money and also they pay in their own currency. Why can we not pay in our own currency then? What's wrong with our currency that we have to pay with it? Because trading happens using the USD, it's easier to place sanctions on countries and to make countries poor because they have disagreed with you in some instances. A good example is what happened with Zimbabwe. Many times we've been told that the late president, Robert Mugabe, was a dictator, was this and that. Depends with whom you ask. Some people will say, yes, he's a dictator. Some people will say, oh no, this is a man who was trying to fight for his people. Again, depends with whom you ask. But for an African, if you ask them, Mugabe was somebody who was fighting for the rights of his people. He was fighting against that inflation thing that is being caused by the USD. Look at what happened to it. Another example is Cuba. Cuba also was put sanctions on by the United States of America. It became so poor. So over-reliance on the Western currency to trade is what also can cause a country to fall economically. A better example is Zimbabwe. We have so many examples. And also some countries in Southern America and Southeastern Asia have also suffered the influence of using USD. Now, that is one thing. Another thing is, as I told you, is growing your own food. When you grow your own food, you don't need to depend on another person. Once you have food, that is the only thing that matters. Education, we can use our own form of education, you know. We are smart enough to build pyramids. We are smart enough to live longer. We are smart enough to cultivate crops that are very, very hygienic, crops that are very, very productive. Have you not noticed that today's farms are not as productive as the farms 20 years ago or 10 years ago? It's slowly becoming like let me say 20 years ago. The same farm that your grandmother used with her own seeds performs differently today because of who? The West. Bill Gates is bringing seeds and he is in business. He wants you to go back to his shop and buy those seeds. So the seeds that you buy from his shop cannot give you another seed to plant. You can only eat it, and it's genetically modified. It's not pure seed. It's something which has been modified. It has been engineered. It has been edited. You don't want to put such things in your stomach. But the West, because they are in business, they are coming to pile those poison onto us so that we can keep ourselves poor. They keep themselves rich by us being poor. Africans, I think we should be smart. Thank you for the professor for confessing all this to us. I appreciate. And also, if you appreciate my work, support me on Patreon, become a member. I'll surely appreciate. See you in the next one.